if you will. I went from Florida to Las Vegas. I was in the belly of the beast when it comes to partying. I was at the highest echelon of all, hedonistic behavior, right? Sex, drugs, alcohol, all of that, right? And so but I was still kind of functional, right? And so then from there,
Mm.
I developed a drug problem in cohorts. I guess it like on top of my alcohol problem, I developed a pill problem. And so what happened is I said, okay, this is too much. I know what I can do to fix it. I'm going to change my location, which is what many people that have a substance abuse problem, that's what they do. Oh, I'll just move away from the problem. But see, the problem is you bring yourself with you. Right. So, and that's what I did. I moved to Colorado and it did not slow down. And I found out that I had the ability to find drugs and alcohol, whether there was 6,000 people in the town or 6 million people in the town. I have this innate ability to find drugs and alcohol where the people are that are doing them. And so this continued on until my body started to give up. And so in my book, what I opened up with was me being in a coma. Right. It was a diabetic coma induced from drugs and alcohol, basically destroying my pancreas. Right. So I developed diabetes, but I didn't want to admit I had diabetes or a drug problem. So I ended up in a
Mm.
diabetic coma. And
Welcome to Your Wordless Podcast, the space where we redefine success, self-worth, and transformation. I am Nick Nieras, the soul-centered architect of transformation, helping you unlock your highest potential and build a legacy beyond limits. Now, whether it is self-mastery, career breakthroughs, or wealth creation, this is where change begins. Now let's dive in. Are you stuck in a job that you don't love, feeling like you're meant for more? It is not in your head, it is in your soul. I am Nick Yaras and I help high achievers like you break free from burnout, rewire self-doubt, and build a life aligned with purpose through coaching, hypnotherapy, and soul activation. Because let's face it, real wealth isn't just about money, it is about aligned and happy heart, mind, and soul. Now, remember, you are worthy and you are enough. Let's transform your life together. Visit www.thenickyaras.holisticlifestyle.com to begin.
thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So Ryan, first off, right off the bat, can you share with us what was it like growing up as a Ryan Penley?
Well, I think had a very typical white guy in America childhood. I got to be honest. It was rather standard. N- When I was growing up, I learned, or at least I was conditioned in my family, that the alcohol was all right. And even though as a child, I couldn't pinpoint the extracurricular activities that my family was into, but my family was fond of substances, right? And it wasn't taboo. It was like very normal to drink a lot. My mother, she was an addict. My father, biological father, he was a cocaine mule, which I don't know if your listeners are familiar with that, but he trafficked narcotics, cocaine specifically. And so, as a child, and I started this off by saying I had a typical white guy
That's
upbringing,
not
right?
really typical.
It's right. So I was not wise to that. And so I went to school, everything was very normal. I had friends, I played sports. And so that element was what I was referring to as normal. And so, I was living in the suburbs and, to my knowing and my knowledge, I had no idea to the extent at how deep these things were running around me in my circumstances. And so as a kid, I was growing up, and then boom, I had a few drinks at a party, and all of a sudden, at least in my own mind, I was funny and I was able to talk to girls. And then boom, you want to fast forward 10 years after that, and I got a full blown alcohol problems. It all started with innocent intentions, I suppose, the loss of inhibitions, and then it ballooned into a full blown problem. Right.
Okay, I am known to ask some pretty deep questions, and I hope
Yeah.
I mean, if only if you're comfortable sharing. So,
Super comfortable. Yeah. I mean, you cannot hurt my feelings. Go ahead.
Okay, what is your backstory then? Let's start it off from there. Like, what is your backstory with your recovery? Because I read your profile on Podbat, so there was some pretty interesting background, but I would love to hear it from the person himself.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I'm on the better end of a recovery journey, but it always
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like that. Right. And so, in this walkabout, if you will, I went from Florida to Las Vegas. I was in the belly of the beast when it comes to partying. I was at the highest echelon of all, hedonistic behavior, right? Sex, drugs, alcohol, all of that. Right. And so, but I was still kind of functional. Right. And so then from there, I
Mm.
developed a drug problem in cohorts. I guess it like on top of my alcohol problem, I developed a pill problem. And so what happened is I said, okay, this is too much. I know what I can do to fix it. I'm going to change my location, which is what many people that have a substance abuse problem, that's what they do. Oh, I'll just move away from the problem. But see, the problem is you bring yourself with you. Right. So, and that's what I did. I moved to Colorado and it did not slow down. And I found out that I had the ability to find drugs and alcohol, whether there was 6,000 people in the town or 6 million people in the town. I have this innate ability to find drugs and alcohol where the people are that are doing them. And so this continued on until my body started to give up. And so in my book, what I opened up with was me being in a coma. Right. It was a diabetic coma induced from drugs and alcohol, basically destroying my pancreas. Right. So I developed diabetes, but I didn't want to admit I had diabetes or a drug problem. So I ended up in a
Mm.
diabetic coma. And so in this coma, my body temperature went to 85 degrees. I was basically dead. And they flew me in a helicopter from this very small town that I was staying in Colorado to a larger town where they could triage me and save my life. They did. And from that point, this is where people believe that everything turned around like magic. Things got even darker, right? So I came back to Florida, dug my heels in real deep with my alcoholism. I couldn't afford drugs anymore, right? Drugs are expensive. So alcohol is about as cheap as it comes, and it's legal. So you can find it pretty much everywhere. And so when this particular part of my addiction got worse, the alcoholism, that's where things got dark. For instance, my mother, she said she accused me of trying to cut her head off. She's also got a drug and alcohol problem currently. She's still kind of in the trenches as far as her demons are concerned. And so she sent me to jail for trying to cut her head off. Now, here's the thing. I don't remember not cutting her head off. I'd like to believe that none of that really truly happened. Neither one of us were in our right minds, but here it is in Florida. If somebody gets accused, somebody goes to jail. And so I went to jail and couldn't remember why. So I'm in jail and I read the police report, and here's my mother writing that I tried to cut her head off. And so this is where it got as about as dark as it could possibly get. Now, this period of time, it went on for a while. So in that, suppose like 6 or 7 years back in Florida, and the alcoholism was really, really deep. I was homeless, endless. Everybody had turned their backs, rightfully so, because I was not the kind of person you wanted to have around or be around, or the kind of person that you could trust. So I basically shoved everybody away from me. And so the background story of myself is that, I guess I did it right. When it comes to hitting rock bottom, I was undoubtedly at that granite stone bottom of the hole. I was unable to dig any deeper. And so, that's the background story of basically the genesis of my message these days.
First off, I would like to commend you for your openness and honesty with sharing that story of yours. I feel most people, oftentimes when when you're in the thick of it, you cannot see this. When you're really, there's some pivotal moments that really crack your heart open, that, or I believe in there's a higher power. And so when those moments come to you, it's okay, we're giving you a second chance, and therefore it is up to you to take it, to take the reins, basically take your life by
Hmm.
the reins. And so
Yeah.
I was reading your questions about your mother's head off. Like, did you think that it was because she was under the influence of the drugs too, and that's why she accused you of that? But then I also noticed you said you remember not not cutting, or was it like this? So
Right, the way I word it, yeah, it's interesting. I don't remember not cutting her head off,
exactly. So
meaning, like,
you've always wanted, because this rage within you that you don't really
no,
know.
I well, here's the thing, that,
Okay.
an excellent question, by the way, and this is a tricky part of the story. But the problem is that I would have liked to believe that I didn't do that. However, I didn't remember anything. So how could I truly
Right.
defend myself? How could I truly defend myself if I didn't know what was really going on? And so now that being said, my mother has also accused several people, my biological father, my stepfather, her mother. She's accused many people of trying to murder her with head wounds. She's not a well person, by the way. So, not that that doesn't mean that I'm not accepting responsibility, because I am. And the thing is, and the point is that I wasn't able to defend myself because I didn't remember what I was doing. Because of my actions, I put myself into a position where I couldn't remember. I couldn't say that it was a complete lie. Why? Because I didn't remember anything. And so that being said, in that particular point, it was a pivotal moment. Now, it wasn't a divine moment, I'll tell you that. It was not one of the divine moments that really
Come to
truly
Jesus
showed.
moment, like, oh,
It wasn't, because it was like 2 very sick people, my mother and myself, got
right.
into a tussle, if you will. We got it, whatever did
Mm,
happen, it wasn't good. And,
mm-hmm.
I went to jail as a result, but that wasn't when God actually intervened in my life, although that I believe he has several times. So, hopefully I kinda answered that question, because it was like you
You
wanted to know
did.
more about my mother's, what happened there. And so I
Mm-hmm.
wish I could really give you the details, but I really can't, and so, but it is a
Mm.
big part. It's a big part of the story.
Okay, well, now let's reel it back in, Ryan. Now, I've spoken to so many people, and they've, especially when it comes to addiction, right? Why is it so hard for people to detach themselves or cut themselves from this addiction? I know you talk about your environment influences, could be peer pressure as well, or it could be from the family dynamics. But now that you're sober for so many years now, and I think you've also helped people, right, get through this.
Yeah.
What are these common challenges?
Right, yeah. Well, many smart people
Ooh,
develop
yes.
they
God.
develop a drug and alcohol problem. Why? It makes sense. It makes logical sense. It's cheap, it's fast, and for the most part, it works. Now, this is foregoing what will happen in the future. It is immediate gratification. And because if you do a bunch of cocaine, I can almost promise you biologically, you will become high and you will feel good and you will forget whatever the heck is going on in your life. It is almost a fact that that will happen. Now, it only lasts about 10 minutes and then you're trying to do more. And then so this is the nature of it, because smart people get addicted to these things because they work and they're so readily available and they're cheap. Now, again, the differentiation between an addict and a person who doesn't have a problem is that addicts are unable to, at some point, think of the future. They are foregoing their thoughts about the future and what will happen in an hour or 24 hours or a week or whatever it may be, for the sake of the immediate moment. And it's like, now this is it's a very wide spectrum to the degree that people become addicted and how close their time frames or how tight their time frames become. Me, my time frame, and I kid you not, my ability to think outside of a 4-hour window, gone. I couldn't think a week ahead. I couldn't think one day ahead. I thought 4 hours at a time. I slept 4 hours at a time. Why? Because that's how long I was high. That's how long I was drunk. No matter what it was, at around 4 hours, I was starting to sober up, and that's a problem. So, it shrunk my ability to think of the future, to consider the recourse of my actions, all of it out the window. And it got so small. 4 hours was about all I could consider in my future. And so, how do people become addicted? Well, one, it makes sense. If you have issues and you want to forget them, these methods, they're rather effective, right? They are. And so, but then you do them enough and you start to completely ignore what happens the next day, how you feel the next day, what may happen. You just say, to hell with it. I don't care what happens the next day. I need to be numb now. So this is what I believe really gets people hooked.
There are two things that came up when you were saying that, those things. Number one was when you started off with high achievers or people who are smart, it is like you know that you do so well in this one part of your life and you give your best 100%, 200%. But then you also want to almost like submit to your, I don't know, this darker parts of yourself and to just let go and be consumed. At least that's what I think about, because growing up, I've tried certain things as well, but not drugs. Other things, yes. However, what I notice is because I'm putting on this mask that I am good. I'm doing something just to gain some, just to prove that I'm good enough. And so, but it's a mask that inside within me, I'm not good enough. And therefore I need to work extra hard than other people. But then kept me just, I'm cutting myself some slack by doing all these things. I noticed that's maybe I don't have the statistics for it, but I think highly functional addicts are like that. They show or portray those kind of behavior. I don't know about you, but it was like for me. And then the second point was the now. It's almost paradoxical to us staying present in the now. Now, the other end of the spectrum is using drugs to be in the moment. But the other end of the spectrum is really embracing the stillness. Now, I'm going a bit spiritual here, but it's
Go run
almost,
with it. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a human nature, right? And why we're here, we're just trying to remember why we're here in the first place. But because we're put in the circumstances within our family dynamics, or yeah, because we don't get to choose who our parents are, we don't get to choose where we're born, which country we're born in, and I guess it's the journey. So I mean, I'm just sharing my thoughts with you.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, the stillness for people that are addicts or alcoholics, stillness is terrifying. It's part of the issue. I can say that a lot of people. Well, I don't know if I could really speak for a lot of people, but for myself, like there is I was scared to just sit alone with myself. I'm kind of like a high energy kind of guy. Like I start to get uncomfortable in my own skin. And when that had happened to me, I was like, well, I know the solution to this. It's easy. And so if I, start to get a little bit like, okay, things are slowing down and I'm not okay with that. Like I know what will help here. And I would lubricate myself socially with alcohol, or I would numb those nerves that were tingling from being still or being in solitude. And I struggled with those things. And so a lot of people do. And when you opened up this conversation, you had mentioned those demons. And so many times in stillness, that's where the demons, those whispers start to get louder, right?
Right? Yeah. And okay, so now that you're doing great work right now. So I want to know, Ryan, how do you help people? Like, number one, if people come to you for help, for advice, how do you help them? And that's number one. And number two, what type of practices do you infuse? Like maybe meditation, I don't know, spiritual. I'm not gonna pinpoint straight to meditation. Any spiritual somatic type of practices you infuse in your teaching.
Yeah. So the lowest hanging fruit here
Mm-hmm.
is a physical exercise intervention. So, and its simplicity is key here. It really is. So somebody that is, they're talking to me about their struggles here, and almost immediately I need to start building a habit. Like for instance, okay, say somebody's got an eating problem and they go to the fridge and they binge eat late at night. Maybe they hold back all day, but then they go to the fridge, the refrigerator, and they just eat nonstop, standing there looking in the refrigerator eating. And I said, okay, what you need to do is intervene with yourself. And it could be I know that's easier said than done, right? So
Mm.
many times when a person is first starting out, there'll be some implementation of some type of exercise. I believe wholeheartedly that we need to incorporate the body inside of this. And it's also the easiest. When I said the lowest hanging fruit, the body and the dopamine that it will release from a very short amount of exercise is immense, right? So what do you do? So this person that going to the refrigerator, I said, okay, either before you get to the kitchen or right when you stand up, you need that distance needs to be taken up by some type of exercise. So I want like either 10 body weight squats or maybe 5 push-ups. And what I'll do is I will let them know, or I will give them a number so small, like 2 push-ups. 2 push can you do 2 push-ups? And there'll be some guy, of course I could do 2 push-ups. Okay, well then just do 2 push-ups and then go to their fridge and eat as much as you want. Just do the 2 push-ups and then go to the fridge, eat as much as you want. Do it. If you just give me the 2 push-ups. And almost every time, like if you're able to intervene and say, okay, well, I'm just going to do these real quick 2 push-ups because that's no big deal. By the time you're done with the second push-up, you think to yourself, you've intervened enough that you've kind of
Exactly.
hit the brakes and you're kind of like, well, wait a second. Well, okay, well, I did the push-ups. I get to go to the refrigerator. So then I might have another conversation. Well, how'd it go? And I say, well, I did it. I did your push-ups and I still went to the refrigerator. I was like, okay. And then I'll step it up. And so by sneaking in that intervention, by
Mm,
sneaking it in, they'll
mm,
start to build that little hesitant muscle, if you will. Right. And so,
mm.
and this could go for anything, right? Like, and now everybody is more deeply affected than another, right? So depending on where a person is at, right? So maybe they don't have a full blown 1 liter of vodka a day kind of a drinking habit would like, some people had like I had. Like that's a different, if it's that deep and dark, okay, we got some other places that we need to start with. But if somebody's like, well, on the weekends I end up drinking 12 beers and it's just, it's making me out of shape and it's just ruining my weekends and I'm not friendly with my kids. I'll say, okay, well, before you go there, right, and I'll have some type of intervention similar to the push-ups, like the squats. Okay, give me, before you go into the store or wherever it is, you just do 10 body weight squats or get up and down off of the couch 10 times. That's it. And so by intervening in a very small way, it's not about the exercise or the degree to how much they're exercising, is that we're sneaking a little bit in there and it interrupts the pattern. And so that's what I would say. Like that's kind of like I said, low hanging fruit, somewhere to start. And people don't realize how well they're starting until they start to get momentum.
I love because it alters the psychology, right? When you're going towards something, your goal, which is, the chocolate or ice cream, but then your awareness comes in and say, okay, do push up. I'm keeping myself accountable. Like what I told Ryan I would be doing. So I do that. But then by that time, you do that enough times, your brain will think subconsciously, okay, you've done the push up and you've been doing it for a week at least. Now you're here. Do you really need that ice cream right now? Or right? Or is it just because of your urges
Yeah.
at the
And you can
moment?
even like ramp it up. It's like, so, okay, you did the 2. And sometimes people will do it in spite. Like, screw you, man. I did it. I did your
Right.
2 push-ups and I still went
But
to the
that
refrigerator.
takes
I'm
a
like, okay.
lot of effort, Ryan. That
And
takes
then
a lot of effort. Yeah.
I'll say, well, how about, well, do you think you could do 10? And they're like, well, yeah, I could do 10. Oh, okay, well then do 10. And before I know it, I've got them doing 50 push-ups before they get to the ice cream. And they're like, wait a second, I rather do the push-ups than go to the refrigerator.
Exactly. I
And
love
so
that.
it could be very tactful, right?
And yeah, and the fact that you said that, yeah, it changes the way a person thinks about that already. And that, I guess that's how we start with this regime, whatever it is, if it's fitness regime or, I mean, probably addiction is, there are a lot more challenges in that because it could stem from, childhood and those things. But having somebody to be your accountability partner, like a coach, like you like yourself, is somewhat very, very I think important. And so I want to go to the programs that you have. What is your program?
Well, there's one that's free that a lot of people have come through. It's myrockbottomrecovery.com, and that's a 21-day challenge, all
Mm-hmm.
video led, really the same kind of approach that I had just mentioned, right? And so it works for people that, maybe they haven't hit rock bottom quite yet, but they're starting to understand that maybe drinking or drugs or whatever that use is it's an issue. Maybe not somebody that needs rehab, but maybe somebody that's, flirted with the idea of sobriety and then they're starting to understand that sobriety is probably the better way to go. So by the time they've developed or worked through the 21 days, they're more than just a couple of toes in the water, right? Like it's actually getting in depth enough to really understand that whether or not sobriety is right for them, and so I'm not telling anybody
Whoa,
that
good,
sobriety.
that's a very powerful one. Whether
Right.
sobriety is right for them now or whether it's not right for them, you know.
Right. And I gotta be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, this is
Okay.
kind of going back to my mother. Like I asked myself the thought question, what would happen if she were to call me and just say, "Hey, listen, I just need help and I need to
Mm-hmm.
turn this around."
Yeah.
But I could tell you that sobriety may not be right for her. Why? Because of her approach. I've never heard her once say that alcohol is an issue. She's not quite there yet. So sobriety is not right for her because she hasn't really dug her heels in there and made that decision because that's what it takes. And so I don't walk around telling everybody that they need to become sober. I'm walking around telling people that need help establishing the sobriety. I'm helping those people. I'm not saying that everybody should just be sober because that's not the case. Some people, and I'm a little bit envious of people that could just have a cocktail normally and that type of thing. I can't do that. Right. Like I just understand
So
that
are
like
you like completely you haven't touched alcohol like since
nothing. That's
proud
moderation.
of you, right?
Moderation is not a thing. I understand that. That's where I'm at, right? But for people that
Exactly.
are able to do that, hey, that's good on you. You know what I mean? And so this is a particular approach that like I said, there's a 21-day challenge. I help people personally, and that is a highly tailored kind of approach, right? Because it's not a one size fits all kind of a story here. Some people
Mm-mm-mm.
have different goals. So you've got to meet people with where they are. And so a person who is seriously considering a life of sobriety and foregoing maybe some of their old ways of drug use, casual drug use, or excessive drinking, whatever it may be, I have a conversation and I see where they are. And if their life, in their opinion, not mine, but in their opinion, could be better if they were sober, now we're a fit. And so then we start making moves towards that.
Wow. Wow. So say somebody invites you to a party, no alcohol for you then.
Oh, yeah, and now listen, it took a while, like, that was a like, okay, for
And this is me
instance.
being curious.
Yeah, and so I lived in Las Vegas for a long time, and I have a lot of friends that still drink and do drugs, and so, for instance, there was probably like 14 of us and I had been sober at that point for a little over a year, and they were like, "We're going to St. Thomas." And so I said, "Well, I wanna go." And everybody was a little bit worried, "What's gonna happen? Is he just gonna fall off the rails? Like, what's gonna happen?" And so, I mean, we're talking copious amounts of drugs and alcohol, copious, tons and tons, and they're doing what they had done, but I made a decision. I want my friends, and when I did go there, I spent 0. Now we prayed a lot during meals, and I prayed for them, with them. However, I didn't try to intervene with them and tell them what they were doing was wrong. I wanted my friends back. I was the one with the problem, and, their lives and their scenarios, circumstances that are theirs. And so I showed up. I loved them. I had a good time with them. We had a great time. I did not drink, and that was just it. And nobody really, it wasn't weird for anybody, and it was a pleasant experience. Now, it took me some time to develop that strength. There were times where I wouldn't have been able to do that. And so anyways, in time I built up the strength, the inner fortitude to be able to
Mhm.
be in that environment and be okay. And I was. And so it was a really pleasant experience, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. And so I did get to keep my friends, and it just took a lot of work on my end. I had to be very strong in order to be with them and friends with them and love them, and not, and I wasn't going in there trying to change them and that kind of thing. I think some of them thought that was going to be, I was going to start.
Different. I'm gonna be gung ho, like, oh, because I'm
Right.
not involved in your
Right. Like I'm just smacking
it's like
drinks out of their
yeah.
hand. Like, what's wrong with you? And I know that wouldn't have worked. And so, anyways, it was that's me. I can go anywhere comfortably and I'm just all right. I don't need to drink and I'm just good.
Well, I very proud of you. So Okay, how important is the support from your friends in this, or your family members, or your significant other? How is important, having a support system while you're on this journey?
Well, I will say this, the majority of my journey was a bit of a solo journey other than God. It was basically God, myself for the majority of it. And now there were some people, pivotal people along the way that really made some real dents or I guess, they really helped me along, right? And I wouldn't have changed those relationships for the world and the help that they had given me. However, I would say that the work was done inside. It was inner work, spiritual work, physical work, mental work, and the support when I was ready was there. But it was useless until you start getting the inner system working correctly, right? And so, like I believe wholeheartedly, like God is not going to show up and he's not going to knock the alcohol or the drugs out of your hand. You have to put it down. But once you put it down, once you make that move and you put it down, everybody shows up out of the woodwork, including God, including your friends. It just seems like it all comes together, but it requires that very first effort on your end. It has to be a decision. And then once you do that, man, the momentum that will come is so pleasant. But I would say that throughout that journey, that the support that was there, it couldn't have worked if I hadn't have done it inside first, right? So that's really, it's been a beautiful thing. But I had to get right to do right by my family and my loved ones because their support was useless until I did that, until I made that decision.
That was powerful, because nothing gets done until we look within. We cannot, there's no way we can go outside and get, yeah, validation or instant gratification just to make you feel good in the moment, but nothing really gets done unless you look within and really face your demons, your darker parts of yourself that you try to shove for so many years. And I am in awe of the work you're doing, Ryan. Thank you so much. All right, there's a question here: who was really to blame for your rock bottom residency? Yourself?
Who's really to blame?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, me. And this is a gift, and I'm in throughout all of this in this journey, throughout the entire test, there was this really unique part of my journey that I'm so very blessed or proud of. I never really blamed anybody. I never blamed, and this is a big deal. Like, this is a big deal because many people have to get to that point where they stop blaming their parents or whoever, the government or God or whoever, like, because you have no power when you're doing that. And so when you ask the question, who is to blame for my rock bottom residency? Well, me. And the beauty of that is that I've always felt that way. I've never truly blamed anyone but myself. And I even looking back, I think what a gift it was that I never really shunned the responsibility. I always knew it was me. I didn't even try to pretend like it was somebody else's fault. I knew it was my fault. And so that being said, to answer your question, it's me. I am at fault for my rock bottom residency. Not everybody, a lot of people have to do a lot of work in order to get to that point, which is a huge, huge milestone in a recovery journey is when you stop blaming other people and you bite down and realize it's you putting that into your mouth. It's you that's holding that bottle to your mouth. It's you. And so, that was a big, big part of my journey.
And again, it's so apt tying it back to ourselves. All right. So, what are the highlights of your life right now, Ryan?
Oh, yeah. I got a 15-month-old son. I yeah,
Congratulations.
and I mean, that's it really, I've got a family now, and so it's so wild once you set things into a positive direction, once you aim up instead of down, and you just commit to aiming up every day, what happens in your life is exponential. It is truly mind blowing to think back to myself. If we were doing this interview, you know, a few years back, I mean, none of this would have been a possibility for me. And then I look back at how quickly things turned around for me once I made that commitment, once I started making a daily decision to make myself better, like how quickly everything kind of came. This is my major message for people. I'm like, just win small day after day after day. You beat yourself who you were yesterday just by a tiny bit. And if you're able to string that along, it is unreal how quickly things will turn around. And so for me, I have a family now, it is, well, I have a business. It goes on and on and on. And I can't even, I couldn't have fathomed this life. But yeah, right now, it's hard to beat my little boy. I mean, he's learning to walk and it's crazy. It is beautiful.
I love that for you. You've really turned your life around. I mean, hearing from what you just told me, and I mean, even if you were to be a guest on any show, I don't think you would be in the right frame of mind, right? To be speaking on recovery. I mean, the last, yeah, half decade ago.
Yeah.
So
Believe me,
proud of you, Ryan.
a completely different person. I can tell you that. I mean, it's unreal.
Okay, so what are you working on currently? Anything exciting? And what is next for you?
Yeah, well, this answers a few of those questions. Well, I have a podcast of my own. It's called The Next Fix, right? And so that's a play on addiction, but I am having conversations with people asking that same very question: "What's next?" And what's next, right? And so I always make this joke, and you seem like a spiritual person, and so I always make this analogy that like God is driving this minivan and he's driving the minivan and I feel like I'm a child in the back. I'm like, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" And like I ask him what's next almost every day, like an impatient child. And it's like he's just smiling and he's just driving. And he's never brought me anywhere that I wasn't like, wow, thank you. Like well, he's never brought me through something that I didn't look back and realize that was meant to be, or that was a heck of an adventure. But yet I still ask myself that same question: what next? What next? What next? And so to answer, even though I have a show about asking people that question, I don't have an answer for you for
Have you?
myself. Maybe
Hey
that's why
guys.
I started the show. I started that show because I was like, I can't answer it myself. I'm going to ask other people.
Love that. So that means you're trusting the process,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I trust the process. That's for sure.
But inside there's this urge of wanting to know where's next, but at the same time trusting the process. So
Yeah. Faith.
faith, exactly. Okay, Ryan, we're gonna pivot to a self-worth question. Now, there's no right or wrong answer to this question. So the question that I have for you, I actually shuffled them to suit my guess. So self-worth can be affected by relationships with other people. Now, how can individuals establish healthy boundaries and foster relationships that support their self-discovery journey?
So the question is, how do you set your own boundaries with others, establish boundaries with others in order to foster your own personal discovery and growth, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, one is time. But like for instance, okay, well, we'll use this example that I had just was talking about going to St. Thomas with these friends. I mentioned that I love these friends. I mentioned that I want these friends in my life. I mentioned that I wanted them back after pushing them away for so many years. I mentioned that I don't want them to change. It wasn't my mission to change them. However, that trip to St. Thomas was where I left it. I'm still very fond of them, but we don't share the same goals. We don't share the same. These are not the types of people that I communicate on a daily basis. I spent a couple of weeks with them in the islands and it was perfect. However, that's my boundaries for them because they still do drugs and alcohol. And that's okay. Maybe not all of them, but my point is that boundary or in that experience, that circumstance was what I allowed to have with them in a healthy environment, if you will, right? But that relationship and that joy and that experience with them was left there. I still talk to them seldomly, right? But they are not a part of my day-to-day goals, my day-to-day achievement because they just have different goals. They have different things in mind. And so that's an example of a boundary that I have with people that I do care greatly about. But for the person who's just they're setting out and they're dedicated to their own personal development, well, it's your time. We spend so much. Well, here's a good analogy, and this is the Jim Rohn analogy. What happens if a person who is your enemy that is a criminal, they're evil, and they pour sugar into your coffee, what happens to you? Nothing, right? Your coffee's a little sweet. Now, what happens if a friend of yours walks by and they put poison into your coffee? And so this is where Jim Rohn would say, keep your eyes on your coffee, right? But like the point is that these people, these relationships, whoever that you are running into, you have to be weary about how they're affecting you or your coffee, right? And so even the people with the best intentions, your best friends, your family that loves you, they can steal your time and they can impede in your personal development if you don't have healthy boundaries. So oftentimes that's time. Oftentimes it's just setting up, okay, I'll talk to you for a little while, but I only have 15 minutes to spare because I can't just sit on the phone with you, complaining about XYZ for several hours. So you just set up these different little sets of boundaries with all of them, but almost every time it comes down to time. Like how much time can you allow for that person to be there for them? And it usually has to, usually have to make it a finite, set the boundaries. Hey, I gotta go. No problem. I'll talk to you soon. And usually that's what it boils down to. But you've just got to be weary about who is around your coffee.
I love that. And I'm going to trace it back to energy, right? It's people who are you're spending your time with. That means you're giving your energy towards them. And when you feel like these people are draining or they're pulling on your energy a bit too much than what you allow them to I mean in the first place with, then okay, this is where I draw the line in the sand. Okay, it's so nice talking to you. It's so nice hanging out with you today, but I gotta go.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean they have to go completely. It just
Exactly.
you just can't afford to be with them every day doing the same things and following them down that same path if it's not the path that you don't want to be on. So it's important to safeguard, like you said, your energy, your time, that type of thing. It doesn't mean that you have to shut them out entirely. That is not what that means.
Exactly. Okay, Ryan, what is your heart's greatest wish?
My heart's greatest wish. I would say I journal almost every day. One of the questions I ask myself is, what do I desire? And it is, well, part of it is to stay on the path that God has intended for me. And then in addition to that is that path allows me to continue to press the potential that I have. Right. The potential, I want it to be nearly, I want to, you live full, die empty. I want to leave the tank empty. I want to let it loose in life. I don't want to die in the chair. I want to make sure that I'm pushing hard, maximizing my potential so that I can have this legacy for my son. And so he could see that, that his father didn't leave anything on the table. I didn't have any regrets. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I don't have many regrets. So that's really what I want. That's my deepest heart's desire.
That's beautiful. Wow. Okay. If you could create a quote right now to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, Ryan, what would it be?
Well, I steal a lot of my quotes, but the reason why so many people are just way smarter than me. So I pluck. So this is
As
gonna
long
be
as they
from,
work for you, it's fine.
yeah, and it's from Les Brown. He says, if life knocks you down, make sure to land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. And so that was one of it. He's an old school motivational speaker, and I think there's a lot of power in that, right? Like you will get knocked down, but you can do something about the way that you land, and then can do something. You definitely do something about the way you get up.
That would be my message too for today. Okay, Ryan, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, well, I do want to. I don't know if you could have seen that, but I encourage anybody to check out my book, Man Up, Sober Up.
Okay.
It's on Amazon. Also, my website is my name, ryanpenley.org, www.ryanpenley.org. I also have a Facebook page, My Rock Bottom Recovery. There's got a few followers over there. Come send some messages, interact. There's a lot of people, like-minded people there being positive and stuff like that.
I love that. Well, okay, Ryan, we're almost at the tail end of the interview. Any last message for our listeners before we wrap this up?
I just want to encourage people. Give yourself some grace, but like I also said, keep your foot on the gas, right? There's a biblical term, I love it. It's on my branding is to fall down 7 times, get up 8, right? So it doesn't matter how many times you fall down, but if you don't keep trying to get back up, that's the issue. Keep your foot on the gas, keep moving, keep pushing. And how many times that you may believe that you have failed or believe that it hasn't worked out, it just takes you getting up that one last time. So I really encourage people to give themselves some grace and then they keep moving forward, right? Keep pushing forward, keep searching, keep trying, keep that effort high. Never stop pushing in this life because that's what it's all about.
Well, that is a wrap on today's inspiring episode with Ryan Penley. Thank you, Ryan, for the work that you do, for continuing to uplift the world around you and those around you. Now, for our listeners, this has been Your Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you've ever felt worthless, remember you are not alone. Your soul chose to be here to matter. And for that reason alone, you are worthy. A huge thank you to you again, Ryan, and to all of you for listening. Until next time, I am Nick Nieras. Keep shining, keep growing, and always remember you are worthy and you are enough. See you in the next episode. Thank you for your time, Ryan. Love this episode? Now, transformation doesn't end here. Head on to at holistic.lifestyle_with Nick. That is on my Instagram. Or head on to my website, www.denikeraswholisticlifestyle.com for more info on my coaching framework, which is the Worthy, Authentic, and Abundant Framework, digital guides, and my upcoming events such as retreats and master classes and workshops. Now, I also do intuitive readings where we get to check on your soul path. And if you're also wanting to check on your energetic alignment, I have done that too. And I offer that kind of services. So, my question to you is, are you ready? Because I am. Let's create your lives together. Good evening to you, Ryan. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you for asking, Nicolette.
Well, thank you for saying yes to be interviewed and for coming onto my show. I'd like to introduce myself to you formally and to all of our listeners tuning in for the first time and or returning subscribers. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, today we're going to talk about transforming your inner demons. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's a very near and dear topic to my heart because I too, and I think we can never, how do I say this, get away from it. It's about learning how to embrace these dark parts of ourselves, right?
Ah, right.
Allow me to introduce you to all of our listeners first, Ryan, and then we can get right into our conversation. Hello, everyone. We have Ryan Penley here with us with more than 4 years of hard won sobriety. Ryan has transformed his life, adversities into valuable lessons for those still struggling with addiction. Now, today, he lives a life that is unimaginably blessed, exceeding even his own expectations. Now, his debut book, Man Up, Sober Up, serves as both a testament to his resilience and a practical guide for those seeking to reclaim control over their lives. More than a survivor, Ryan is a beacon of hope for those still battling their demons. He demonstrates that from the depths of despair, it is indeed possible to forge a life filled with purpose and joy. Welcome to the show, Ryan.